What type of software engineer are you to make $500,000? Are there any challenging moments in your journey that really made you doubt yourself?
Hey, I'm Esco. I'm a senior software engineer at Airbnb.
What's up? Welcome back to the Dev Story series. And everyone, if you remember Esco from the first episode of Dev Stories, his video did amazing, over 600,000 views. But what I figured when I saw the video is that you guys still had a lot of questions about Esco and what he's been up to since then. So maybe Esco, we can start with letting us know, have you been a year since we filmed that video?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. I had a fun time doing the last video. Since that time, there's been a lot of changes. I moved. I just bought a new property. Also, I had a kid, so a whole new person is here now.
That's
awesome.
Going
late December. Yeah, those are the biggest updates. So yeah, the Facebook group that I mentioned in the last video, where it's a group of Black software engineers helping each other study for interviews and general career advice. It's grown. Before that video, it was about 2,000, and now we're at 10,000.
Yeah, honestly, I love that group. I'm always on the group, learning from everyone else. People always are asking great questions, sharing how they're progressing in their tech careers. You can see that a lot of people's lives are changed by having access to that group. I think it's such a great resource. So everyone, if you're interested in joining that group, I'll leave a link to it right here so that you can also check it out. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions from the audience that I got from Instagram and also from YouTube, with people wanting more details to understand more about your journey so that they can replicate a part of your journey too for themselves. So we'll start with the most spicy question that we got, which is, what type of software engineer are you to make $500,000? Because a lot of people in the comments were very skeptical. I think they're not used to hearing about software engineers making so much money. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what type of software engineer you are to make $500K.
Got it. Yeah. So it's kind of similar to what country you live in. I think Warren Buffett has this famous quote where he says that he got lucky when he was born because he was born in America, and if he wasn't born in America, he wouldn't be he wouldn't have the potential to reach where he is right now. Or not just America, but a country that is like America. But if he was in like a third world country, the chances will be slim. So that's an analogy for corporations and how there's different pay tiers, different practices and pay ranges and salaries and compensation. So if you're working at a big tech company like a Google, Airbnb, Uber, there's pay ranges that are set. So for the most part, nobody's going to pay less than the bottom of the range, and the top of the range also as well is pretty high. So if you're going to be working at these companies, you're going to be getting that money no matter what. You don't have to be some kind of special software engineer. For the most part, most people are really capable of doing this work. It's just that they need to develop the skills. So if you were to take it upon yourself to figure out where your gaps are, where your weaknesses are, and learn these algorithms for the interview process, that's going to be a long way forward. And then the second thing is architecture. If you build up your architecture skills to pass the architecture interview, then you're pretty much set without even really changing your core software engineering skills, which is kind of crazy because the way the interviews work, they look for specific things. So they want to know that you can write algorithms, you can solve the questions, they want to know you can design systems, and there's a certain rubric that they use to measure your skill set based on whatever they ask you on the interview. And then there's also the behavioral interview where they get more experience into your actual day-to-day work. But usually, most people pass that. That's one of the easier interviews. As long as there's no huge red flags, you're going to be pretty good there. And as long as you meet the requirements right for the role, if you're going to be a senior engineer, typically it's going to be 5 years of experience. And, time doesn't directly correlate to your skill set, but just that, in that amount of time, you're more likely to work on enough projects to show your skill set. Basically, people who work at Google, 99% of them are not some super elite engineer. They just acquire these skills that Google's looking for. They're good software engineers. Most people can do well at software engineering. I don't think there's much of a difference between people in both groups.
Yeah, no, I agree. So people wanted to know specifically with the 500K, it's not just base salary, right? It's everything together.
Yep. Basically, the popular phrase to refer to it is total compensation, or TC for short. So whenever you get paid, it's not going to be all cash. These companies, they're able to save money in paying their employees by using stock that they kind of basically give away a portion of the company in exchange for cash so that they don't have to use the entire cash position. Also, it's a nice incentive because people basically want to hold the stock and wait for it to grow as they invest over time. So it could be more beneficial than cash in some cases, or it could be worse. It's basically like investing. So yeah, basically there's a few components. There's the base salary, then there's the equity package, which is usually over 4 years. So you take that total number divided by 4, that's how much you get every year. Then there's like a sign-in bonus, depending on if you're talking about when you join or the year afterwards. And then there's your regular performance bonus, which could be usually percentage based, like mine is right now. It's like 20% for senior level at Airbnb. And then there's refreshers. So after you work for a year, the next year you get granted more equity, and that extra equity is called a refresher. It's kind of like refreshing your equity package. And that is another usually 6-figure amount that you divide over 4 years and you add it to your income every year. So basically, year 2, you're going to get a refresher for year 1. And then year 3, you get another refresher for year 2. Year 4, you get another refresher for year 3. And all the while, they're kind of all paying out 1/4 each time. So like your income keeps increasing over time.
A lot of people are also curious, what type of work do you do day to day? They want to know what specific like stack you're using.
I would say there's like different types of work. There's like product engineering. And that just means like you're building a website, an app, whatever it is that other users or other companies are using. And then there's like infrastructure where people focus on like cloud services, like building those tools that other developers use. And there's like so many other sections. So like me, I'm mostly on the product side. And there's also platform. Platform is like building the infrastructure and the application layer for the companies, like libraries and tooling and stuff like that. Yeah, most of my work is on the product side and a little bit of platform stuff. Full stack. So full stack, it just means back end and front end. And front end has many different components, like there's front end web, there's front end mobile, which is like Android, iOS, and so on. For me, it's front end web. So I'm back end and front end web. Most of my day to day is doing back end work for like the past 5 years or more by now. Although I started out my career as front end. I have like a really strong front end skill still while I'm doing just mostly back end, and I try to keep them fresh, work by working on projects. On my day to day at work, it's not even just code, because we don't realize if you're just getting into it, this is a team sport. You know, we're not just going to work and just coding up and then just going home. We're talking with our teammates because we're on a team. We are collaborating to build software. So we have discussions around how do you do something, the right way. You want to consider trade-offs. You want to see if anything's wrong. You even talk to people in other teams, because sometimes you're working on code that has to depend on code that they wrote, or that's going to interact with them, or maybe their code is going to depend on code that you wrote. So you have to have this cross-team collaboration and come up with design documentation to say, how do you fit this new feature into the system? Because people don't realize that if you want to add a small feature to like an existing product, it may seem like it's easy, but it could be a massive task. It could take a whole year to do a small feature because of the way things are set up. You could think about it like construction, right? If you have a huge building, a very tall building, and you want to add another floor randomly in some part of it, like right in the middle, you have to lift the entire top building to put that new floor there. And that's like a huge effort. Even though it's one floor and it already has like 1,000 floors, just adding one floor like that is going to take a lot of effort. And that's how it is with software. You have to figure out what does your code plug into the existing system and make it scale just with everything else.
So that's a really good point. A lot of people were curious, what kind of skills outside of programming and your technical skills are the most important?
So that's a good question. There's a lot involved in building software besides just coding. So like, as I mentioned before, you're on a team and you're working with other people. So like there's people management. Even if you're not a manager, you'll need to be able to have these soft skills that you can use to communicate with people and collaborate. And if you want to basically introduce a new process, like for example, on my team, we have a process that we follow, which is agile. And I guess it's more of something deeper to go into, but long story short, it's a set of rules for like how we work to make things easier and more consistent. Mm-hmm. So like following things like that takes time to like learn the different processes and get acceptance or buy-in from other people in the team who want to move forward with it and so on. Another thing I think is important is as you're building software, there's like all these constraints and all these needs from different people and business goals and stuff like that. So being able to manage all those expectations and the timeline is extremely important. So let's say if you were given a job to build some kind of front end widget for a website and, they wanted to get done in 2 weeks, and then you looked at it and you're like, oh, it's actually going to take 3 months. That type of thing could happen. And you have to be able to push back and say, it's going to take me 3 months to do this because of X, Y, Z. And you shouldn't really just commit and then jab into it and try to rush and spend time and burn yourself out, because it's going to look bad. Likely the time is going to slip. You're going to be in a worse position because you're going to be burned out and it's going to look bad on you. So even if it's going to take a lot more, you don't be scared to tell them it's going to take a lot more time. It is what it is. If it's going to take more time, then it's going to take more time. So if you do that, then even though it's taking more time, you're going to have a successful release and that's going to look good on you. So the amount of time something takes is not as bad. So like that type of skill set is actually very important, even better than someone who's really good at coding. If you have somebody who's like an expert coder, who's terrible at managing at the time, terrible at pushing back, they might even get fired over somebody who's even a mediocre coder, who's able to manage their project and timelines and people and expectations.
We touched a little bit on interviewing and negotiation in video 1. I think we can kind of dive a little bit deeper. So a lot of people are curious, like, how do you land multiple offers simultaneously? Because I feel like that's a skill to schedule your interviews in a way that you end up being able to pit your offers against each other. So maybe you can help us figure out how to do that too.
Yeah, sure. So back in 2019, actually, I had gotten 6 offers: Amazon, Google, Uber, Reddit, Squarespace, and this startup called Brace. And that was all within like a 30-day period that I got those offers in. Well, actually, no, within 30-day period that I did the interviews and then got the offers weeks after that. So the way I did it was the way I think it makes a lot of sense is you schedule interviews in the order of the companies that you're least interested in first, and then the most interested in last. Because as you do more and more interviews, you're getting better and better. Your nerves are getting relaxed. You're going to be into the mood. It's kind of like going to be your full time job. Like I think I did like 2 or 3 interviews in 1 week. That second and third interview, it kind of feels like you've been doing this for a long time. It's just a whole nother mindset. Also, like the nerves part is just as important as the technical parts. Like knowing how to solve these problems is important, and then you being able to be calm enough to be able to explain as you're coding is super important. So the way I set it up is when you pass a phone screen or when you like first make contact with the recruiter, they're going to ask you when you're available. So you basically tell them dates that are clustering around a certain period of time so that you're going to be able to go on those on-sites within weeks from each other, because a lot of times companies don't want to wait too long for you to accept an offer. So you want to make sure you get these offers within around 2 or 3 weeks of each other. And you can just tell them like what date you want and kind of schedule it that way in the order of the companies that you want.
People are wondering, do you have any tips for negotiation?
So yeah, basically, I think the biggest thing about negotiation is that you have to have multiple offers. If you don't have multiple offers, there's not many levers you can pull to get more. You always should negotiate. You should ask for more. But like, as far as, giving them reasons to give you more, they usually want to see that you have other offers that are better from different companies. And then they're going to either try to match or beat the offer because they want to hire you. They don't want you to slip away and get hired by somebody else. The most important thing I think is interview with multiple companies at the time. Like never interview with just one company, because you're not going to have any leverage to really get another offer. And at the same time, you don't want to just pin yourself down to one company. You can explore your options. Maybe there's a better fit out there that you didn't know about. So yeah, I think that's just the main advice. And then as we get into the weeds of it more in depth, talk about like, you don't want to give a number first. Like you don't want to tell them how much you want to make. You just figure out ways to say you're open to any offers that are market rate. You're exploring your options. You have pending offers or you have offers already, and you want to explore your options to see, what you may be offered that can be beat or matched. And this is in the initial conversation. At some point, you're going to start talking about numbers, but then you can start talking in ranges. If you do give the number first, that's kind of like the anchor. They're going to basically base everything on that number. And that number may be a lot lower than what they were thinking, because you don't have the insights into these pay scales or these pay ranges. And most people don't have the insights until they get into there and they go to a few different companies and start seeing these things and getting an idea of how it works. So like if you go in and you're entry level engineer, you don't know how much entry level makes. You may say, okay, I want $100,000. Right. And then they're going to say, okay, yeah, we can do 90. Even though they usually pay more than $100,000, they can go even lower than that. Meanwhile, if you didn't say anything at all, your first thing they could come out to you with is 150, and you would have been like, oh wow, I would have gotten less than that. That's why you don't say the number first.
This was an interesting question. So when do you know when it's time to stop negotiating? Is it when the numbers are higher than you've ever been paid?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like, as I kind of alluded to before, most people, especially from different financial backgrounds, they don't know how much people are making at these companies, right? If you get an offer back that's more than you've ever seen, it doesn't end there. Like you can get a lot more than that. Like for myself, I had no idea how much these companies made, and I used to have the offers that were much lower than I could have gotten in the past. Using the previous example, if you get an offer for $150,000 and you're saying, wow, I was going to ask for $100K. That's $50,000 more than that. That's crazy. Like that's more than my whole family's making. I'm going to take it now. No, you don't do that, because that's their initial offer. You never want to take their initial offer, because their initial offer is more likely than not never their best offer. So you want to say, okay, 150, that's nice. And then figure out, based on the other offers coming, if you don't have numbers from the other offers, or even if you do have numbers from the other offers, you can just say like another offer that came in. And I think, you can be more competitive if we came up to like 180 or 170. Like, don't be afraid to ask for more. Nowadays, we're in a really good situation because we have websites like Levels, that FYI. We have apps like Team Blind. In these
so
apps,
toxic,
people are, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't look at the other stuff. Just look at the numbers. Don't look at words. Just look at numbers. So people are putting all these offer numbers online in the public for you to see. So like you're gonna know what the pay band is just from that. And when they come back with a 150, even if it's higher, but you're gonna know for the most part if this is one of the bigger companies that they're gonna pay $200,000. Then you can say, okay, I want to go up to that. I want to go say 180, even 200, depending on where your goals are. And for smaller companies or newer startups, this information may not be out there, but you can use information from other companies to kind of gauge what they might be paying, but from other similar companies.
Now we're going to go into questions specifically about your journey, because like I said, a lot of people want to replicate it. They want to be able to be in your position, and they want to know what steps can they take to get there. So the first question is, are there any essential books or courses that you took while you were on your journey that really helped you become a better software engineer?
Nothing specific, I would say, as far as like the journey. I think more recently, there's a really good book that I had read and even still reading different parts of, called Designing Data Intensive Applications. That's a really good book that teaches you about distributed systems and how to build reliable systems that can scale. I think that's a really good book that has a lot of details, a lot of information that's extremely relevant to my day-to-day job and a lot of people's day-to-day job if they build any kind of software that's used by many users. Other than that, though, like throughout most of my career, I just, when I want to learn something, I just go to Google and search, look at the results and choose different sources for the same topic to get different perspective on it. Like it could be documentation, it could be an online course, it could be a book. It doesn't really matter. It's just getting different sources of information on the topics, I think has been important. I'm sure there's been other great books that it's not too important where the source comes from. It's just like that you're seeking them out and like you're not just kind of stagnating, because in this field, things change pretty fast. And like you always got to stay up and kind of learn, and you can't know everything. Like there's always more scope to expand into, or more depth that you can go into. Like if you know how to build MySQL databases and schemas, you may not know how the replication works, like from one database to another. And then like you may not know how that can affect the consistency levels. Like if that's important for your applications, like there's always deeper and deeper to go into. I think, having to focus on knowing when you're kind of stagnating or too high level and you don't understand what's going on. Like if you're having issues or errors that are coming up, you don't know why. That could mean that it's time to dig deeper to learn about how these things are really working together so you can design a system to be more reliable and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. I'll leave that link to the book down in the description box too. So people are curious, how did you land your first freelance job? Because I know that's what was able to move you from like student to being in the workforce, right?
Yep, basically. One in the work, like in the office I had, was like in 2008. But like before that, around like 2007, when I was still in high school, basically I would go online, go on forums like flashkit.com. It was like an old forum for Flash, Adobe Flash stuff. Back then it was like Macromedia. There would be this section that says like jobs or gigs. And you go there and people post that they need help with this thing. They need help with, making something work or something like that. And I was like, since I was 14, I was playing around with Flash, learning how to build games, learning how to build applications with it, learning ActionScript. So I had a lot of experience with it. So I was able to like look at it and like, okay, actually, that's something I could do. That's something I can help out with. So I forgot exactly what it was, but this one guy needed to fix something in this small thing. So I did it and I got $20 on PayPal. And like as a high school student, that was amazing. That was like a lot of money to me. And that's kind of what I did. Like I was just fixing stuff, like small things were broken. My clients were basically other developers. Like I was this kid in high school fixing the code from like people who are working on some project for their job. Small fixes in PHP, something's broken, or something in HTML and JavaScript, something like that. And then it kind of developed from there onto like full-blown projects and so on. And then like different products and demos and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And people are kind of curious, how do you progress in your career, getting to like the staff software engineer level? How do you get there?
That's a great question. So like, I didn't have as much of a understanding of it as this in the beginning of my career about how intentional you have to be. Like my idea about getting promoted was that you just do good work and then you get recognized and they say, hey, you're doing good work, I'm going to promote you. But that's not how it works. You don't get pushed usually to be promoted. Usually you got to be vocal about it. You got to say, hey, especially the higher level you go, like once you go beyond senior, at that point, like a very small percentage of people get there. And there's just no expectation that any senior is going to make it to staff. Like nobody's pressuring you. There's no expectation at all. So you're the one that got to be the one to be pushing for it and like figuring out what are your obstacles, what is the path that you need, what is the work you need to do to get there. So basically knowing that it has to be intentional, it kind of changes your mindset about how you go about it. Instead of trying to do like all this great work and like waiting for somebody to recognize you, you need to have a conversation with your manager, tell them I'm actually interested in the IC track. So there's IC, which is individual contributor, and then there's manager. So if you're interested in the IC track, you tell them like, I want to be a staff engineer. The manager is there to help you through that whole process. So you can figure out, you come up with a plan for it. So the plan could be, looking at the engineering rubric, because companies, they have these things called the competencies, where they have little sections that describe what does it mean is to be a staff engineer? What does it mean to be a senior? What does it mean to be a senior staff or principal? From the technical requirements to the soft skills to the enrichment activities. And enrichment is like company building stuff, like helping recruit people or helping to do like some kind of like extracurriculars type stuff at work. So like all these things come together to meet the bar to reach the next level. And you need to be operating at that level for about 6 months before you can be considered to be promoted at the next level. So basically, using that rubric, you come up with a plan with your manager and you say, okay, you're going to need to have projects that will allow you to show your technical depth for like building complex systems that are involved with multiple teams or multiple organizations. Without going through this process, just your day-by-day job, as you're picking up different tasks, getting assigned different work or grabbing different work, you may not do what you need to be able to show your skill set. So like having your manager know that you want to get promoted and making this plan and knowing that these are the things you need to show your technical expertise in order to meet the bar. Having that in place means that, okay, now when you're thinking about who's going to work on what or what projects are going to be on your plate, your manager is working with you and they're saying, okay, we have this thing coming up. Bukola is trying to get promoted to staff engineer. This is a great project for her to be able to show those skills. So now she's going to work on this. But if you didn't have that conversation, you're waiting for luck. You're waiting, you say you might be lucky. You might come across this project that can help you show those skills. Another thing is like, you may be working super hard on things that don't matter. Like if you talk with your manager and you say, hey, I did this, or hey, I'm thinking about doing this, will that contribute to my promotion? And if they say, you look to what they say, like they say no, then you would have done a lot of work, spent a lot of effort and take away from things you could have been doing to help you get promoted by thinking that you're helping, but you're not. Usually just individual contributions is not enough. Like you need to have input into like the system design of like a larger scope of the system or, some product concerns that you're kind of evaluating. It's not just about like getting a lot of small code tasks done. And so like there's a lot of complexity to it. So that's why you need to talk with your manager and communicate open communication channels to make sure that your assumptions are actually correct and to learn things that are from the gaps that you don't know that are important that you should be doing that you may not be doing and get that feedback and get that continuous feedback. Like you don't stop getting feedback. Typically there's like a one-on-one meeting between you and your manager. Even throughout the week, when you get feedback on something specific, you should always just reach out. Don't be afraid to do that. And this is all very important because without any of this, unless you're lucky, you're not going to get promoted to that next level.
People are really obsessed with the no degree aspect. So have you ever faced any stigma with having no degree?
For the most part, I haven't had any issues at all. I remember just yesterday I was looking at a job description at Airbnb and we're like, all these the guidelines, internal guidelines, and they're like, education is not required. Relevant experience is acceptable. And that's a sentiment that's basically across the board in tech, at least in the US. I know maybe it's different in other countries, but in the US, in tech, especially companies that are mainly focused on tech, they don't care if you have a degree or not. But it was an interesting hiccup that I had at Google, actually, when I had gone through the offer process, where one of the SVPs, senior vice presidents, had wanted to ask why I dropped out of school. I forget exactly the reason or the context that they asked, but I just told them what the situation was. I was working the whole time that I was in school anyway, since high school, and then I got a great job. So I just decided to start my career, and then, I've been doing great since then. I think I was at Uber at the time, or did my own consulting firm after leaving Uber. But yeah, I got that question, and I just answered it, and then we moved forward afterwards. It was no issue. But yeah, other than that strange little hiccup, there was no real issue at all. You don't learn what you need to learn to be a senior engineer at school. You learn entry level stuff at school. College graduate knows how to do stuff that a senior engineer does. They don't learn at school. You learn it on the job. So I think it makes a lot of sense that there's no focus on degree. Always find it strange how degrees are focused on for very senior level positions or even like mid-level, because there's so much that you learn outside of school. I don't even see how it's relevant.
So people are asking thoughts on networking and what type of things can be done to add value to new connections.
And that's another one of the things that I could have done way better early in my career that I didn't realize. I was more of like a hermit crab compared to right now. I'm more open, more outgoing. If you're at a company, guarantee that there's other engineers that have more experience than you. Like there's always bigger fish in the pond. There are people you can leverage to get information from, to be mentors. In a company, they want to encourage their employees to mentor their other employees to grow them, because that's how you have a company with a good culture where your employees are growing the other employees and they're paying it forward and growing the newer employees and so on. In that engineering rubric that I mentioned before, in the list of competencies that I mentioned before that are used to determine if somebody's beating the bar to be promoted, one of those things usually across the board at a lot of companies is if you're mentoring other engineers who are on lower level and you're helping them get promoted, that is really good. That's going to be a data point on your promotion packet. Promotion packet is like a bunch of documentation that is basically a record of your achievements and the things you've done to prove you've hit the bar that's given to the promo committee for the decision to whether or not to promote you. Don't be afraid to ask people to help you be your mentor, because not only will you get the help and potentially get the advice to help you get promoted or get a higher performance bonus because they're doing more things that exceed the expectations of their job.
So are there any challenging moments in your journey that really made you doubt yourself?
Yep. So back in, I think 2016, when I was working at Uber, there was Uber Eats that was still in development. Then there was Uber Rush, which is like a courier service where you want to order a package or get something delivered from point A to B. You can do that through the Uber app. And then there was, of course, like Uber Transportation, like just Uber X, Uber Black, and so on. I was working on a feature for Uber Rush that basically allows a courier to set drop-off notes. Like if the person's not there to receive the package, you can put notes and then save it. Like I was working on a feature like that. And the code at the time, the code paths were all shared. So you have like this middleware that would run multiple middlewares that would run from the same request that go through and do logic for Uber Transport, Uber Eats, and Uber Rush, all in the same code path. The Rush stuff came before Uber Transport. So when I made my change, it introduced like a new field for the drop-off notes that wasn't expected by the Uber Transport. I never recorded during testing because I only tested like Uber Rush stuff, and Uber Transport was more of like a different area of the company at the time, and it wasn't as connected. Like later on, there was more collaboration, but like at the time, it wasn't. So when I released my feature and that unexpected field was there, it like caused the crash. And the effect of that was if you're an Uber driver and you were getting like ride request, you wouldn't be able to like actually click on the ride request. Wow. So basically, and this was like global. And this environment was interesting because like day and night, people are using your stuff. It's not like, you know, in the daytime, people are using this like a bank and then night is gone. It's like global. Mm-hmm. And like also people use it at night too. So it was like the entire world, no Uber driver could accept a trip for 17 minutes.
Oh my God.
And it was crazy because when it first happened, the way we do things is we use feature flags. So like I had deployed the feature, it was behind the feature flag. Then I turned the feature flag on and then that's when everything blew up. But I didn't even see it blow up because again, I was looking at Uber Rush, all the metrics on the graphs. Usually when you deploy something or when you turn on the feature flag, you're supposed to be looking at these metrics to see if there's any errors increasing. Cause like issues happen a lot. So like there's this whole rigorous process around releasing stuff where you got to make sure that things are good before you just sit down and walk away. So yeah, I was looking at the Uber Rush metrics. Everything looked good. End of the day, about to leave. Then I get a message on HipChat at the time. And it was like, did you turn it on? This issue. I forget exactly what he said. And I was like, oh shit. Turn it off. And I was like, okay, problem solved. And at the time, I didn't know what the impact was. Like, he didn't explain what the real problem was. I was like, okay, it was an issue. I'm just turning it off for now and then get back to it tomorrow. And then the next day I woke up and I saw this Google Docs notification of like, global outage, L5.
Postmortem, right?
Yeah, the postmortem. Yeah. I was like, yeah. And they said, Esco. I'm like, what? My name? What's this?
Oh, no.
And I'm reading it in the morning. I'm like, I just got out the shower. And I'm like, what the hell? Oh shit, I'm gonna get fired.
Oh no.
I was like, oh man, so definitely gonna get fired. I went to work and then my manager was like, I think my manager was even on vacation at the time. So it was like my senior the manager above him, like the director or senior manager. He was like, you gotta tell us when this happens. I was like, oh, cause I didn't even realize what he was cool about it though. He was like, I didn't know what the impact was. And I was like, wow, it's crazy how like this huge thing happened. And then I was there, but I didn't even know what happened. And I just went home. So the issue that happened, the fact that I didn't realize the impact of it, that all kind of like contributed to me feeling like, wow, like basically I kind of went into a depression for like a few days. Cause like I just had this feeling of grief of like, I just, for some reason it was always in the back of my head. I was always feeling like down, like, wow, it's crazy. Even though like it was super cool about it. Like I thought I was going to, I mentioned before, like, I thought I was going to get fired. Yeah. Nothing like that happened at all. In fact, like a few months later, I became a tech lead of a portion of my team. So like it didn't have any negative impact to me going forward. But at the time, just because of my preconceptions and like other ideas about like what it means to cause problems like that, or, you know, thinking I was going to get fired, it just really put me down for a while. And it was like for a few days, I had like this strong grief feeling in the back of my head. Yep.
That's crazy. How did you push past that and decide, okay, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm just going to like move past it?
Maybe it was just the whole process. Cause like during the postmortem, I had to present to the CTO and like the VP and all that stuff about the issue. And then like my manager, by that time he came back from vacation, and my senior manager, he was there in the room to like help support. And then it was like, okay, we talked to the CTO in this whole meeting. And then afterwards, that was it, done. And I was like, all right. The cool thing about the engineering companies is that with the whole postmortem process, whenever an issue happens, they try not to blame the person. They try to blame the process. Because if you blame people, then it may happen to another person. It may happen to a percentage of people. So, but if the process is broken and you fix it, then it's not going to happen to anybody. So the whole thing with everything in one code path, that was like changed to be separated into different pods. And that helped reduce this, basically prevent this thing from happening ever again. So like that's the idea. Whenever something bad happens, don't blame the person. Just use them to help figure out how you can prevent the issue from happening again. and then improve the entire company. So it's an opportunity to improve things.
Exactly. Make it more reliable and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then over time, as you know, as things keep breaking, people keep improving things, it becomes more solid over time because like you have all these fixes that are basically preventing the issues from happening again and again.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Hey, this is fun. Thanks.